ABC General Hospital spoilers full 03/24/Alexis finds a lifeless body and the victim's identity is. Hello everyone, and I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, support me and give this video a thumbs up. That March night, the chilly air in Port Charles was cool enough to soak through coats and cause people to quicken their feet. Alexis Davis walked quickly to her office, her mind still caught in the unending strands of guardianship disputes, family secrets, and the lingering anguish over Sam's death. It had been a long day of court files, furious conversations with Jason and Tracy about Danny's future, and a nagging suspicion that something worse was building beneath the town's typical tumult. She'd returned late to grab a file she'd forgotten, something ordinary that felt essential in the silent hours. The structure was poorly lighted, with hallway lights flickering as if hesitant to illuminate the entire interior. Alexis fumbled with her keys, the metallic jingle sounding unusually loud. She pulled the door open, expecting the familiar aroma of old books and coffee, but instead she was assaulted with a sharp metallic tang blood. Her stomach turned before her eyes adjusted. A body lay on the floor near her desk. A man lay face down, arms stretched awkwardly, a dark pool forming beneath him like spilled ink. Alexis remained transfixed for a time, her bag dropping from her fingers and thudding onto the carpet since the image was so unexpected and out of place in this location that had always been her shelter. She forced herself forward, knees shaky and heart pounding. "Hello." Her voice cracked just above a whisper. There was no response, of course. She knelt, taking care not to touch anything more than necessary, and grabbed for the man's wrist. Cold. No pulse. The wounds were severe. Multiple stab scars across the back and side. The shirt drenched with blood. Whoever did this didn't hesitate. Alexis' mind raced. She knew better than to agitate the situation further, but she needed to see the face. She gently turned the body just enough. Recognition struck her like a physical blow. Marco. The quiet investigator who had been looking into Sidwell's operations and had just revealed information about Natalia's death. He had met with her earlier that week, tense but resolute, promising proof that could unravel a web of corruption extending far into Port Charles's underbelly. Now he lay motionless in her office. The implications hit her in waves. This was not a coincidence. Someone intended to silence him, and they selected her space to do so. Her hands trembled as she took out her phone. She called 911 first, her voice firm despite the tremble inside. "This is Alexis Davis. I'm in my law office on Elm Street. There's been a murder. I just found the body." She recited the details robotically, years of legal expertise kicking in even as shock paralyzed her. While waiting for the cops, she couldn't take her gaze away from Marco's face. He had been young, ambitious, and believed that the truth was important. The light had gone out of his eyes, and he stared blankly at the ceiling. Alexis felt guilty. Had meeting with her placed him in danger? Had she unintentionally led him into something fatal? Sirens wailed in the distance, becoming louder. Alexis backed away, leaning against the wall and breathing shallowly. When the officers came, Dante among them, the room erupted into controlled activity. Flash bulbs lit up, evidence markers were put, and questions were shot off in quick succession. "Miss Davis, could you explain what happened?" Dante asked, his tone professional but concerned. He was aware of her history and how difficulty appeared to revolve around the people she cared about. "I came back for a file. The door was unlocked. I thought maybe I'd left it that way. Then I saw him." She was making a vague gesture. "I checked for a pulse. Nothing. I recognized him immediately. Marco. He's an investigator. We spoke recently about a case involving Sidwell." Dante's pupils widened. Marco Escobar. The name lingered heavily. Marco had been making headlines by quietly gathering information about Jen Sidwell's shady business. The same man related to Natalia's untimely death. Rumors circulated that Marco had discovered evidence that Sidwell ordered the hit and was preparing to go public. Alexis nodded. "Yes, he was supposed to bring me documents, but I never received them." The medical examiner arrived, confirming what Alexis already knew. Death by stabbing several wounds, possibly within the last few hours. The time of death was thought to be around nightfall. As Alexis was still at the Court of Main Estate arguing about Danny's custody as the body was placed in a bag and rolled away, Alexis felt the weight of eyes on her. Suspect, witness, or both. She had no alibi for the particular window, but building surveillance footage showed her arriving just minutes before he was discovered. Later at the police station, she made a formal statement. Dante pressed lightly. Any enemies? Anyone who might want to frame you or send a message. Alexis chuckled cruelly. In Port Charles, take your pick. But Marco, he was close to exposing Sidwell. If Cullum or one of Sidwell's men thought he was too dangerous. Dante had written down his thoughts. We'll look into it, but Alexis, stay vigilant. Whoever did this wanted you to find him. These words chilled her. Is there a message? A warning? Perhaps something more personal? Alexis had trouble sleeping at home that night. She paced the living room, repeating the events. Marco's blood on the office floor, his palm curved as if seeking for something just beyond her reach. She thought of Christina, Molly, and how much her girls had already lost. Sam dead. Secrets revealed. How could she shield them from the coming storm? The following morning, the news broke. Local investigator found stabbed in attorney's office. Speculation ran wild. Revenge killing, mafia ties, even suggestions that Alexis herself might be involved given her Cassadine pedigree and previous brushes with violence. Alexis met Diane at Metro Court because she needed a companion who understood the legal nightmare ahead. They'll try to paint me as suspect, she remarked quietly. I was the last person to see him alive in some capacity. Diane gripped her hand. Well, fight it, but first we need to know why your office and why you. Alexis asked, staring into her coffee. Because I was helping him, or because someone wants me scared, or both. Across town, Sidwell's name arose in whispered whispers. Marco had dug deep, uncovering financial documents, witness statements, and even a link to the docks where Natalia had been targeted. If Marco had proof linking Sidwell to murder, it was now missing, most likely seized by the perpetrator. Alexis decided she could not wait for the cops. She launched her own discreet investigation, pulling strings and calling old contacts. She went to Marco's flat as permitted by a sympathetic officer and found it ransacked, drawers emptied, computer missing. However, in a concealed recess under a floorboard, she uncovered a flash drive that had been overlooked in the haste. Back at her temporary workspace, a borrowed area at Diane's firm, Alexis plugged it in. Files flooded the screen, including bank transfers, coded messages, and a damaging audio recording of Sidwell discussing eliminating the Natalia problem with an acquaintance. And there, in a folder labeled Alexis, was a message from Marco. If anything happens to me, get this to the authorities. Sidwell knows you're involved. Watch your back. Tears stung her eyes. Marco had trusted her with his life's work, which had cost him everything. She duplicated the drive and contacted Dante. I found something. Marco left evidence. It's explosive. This information transformed the case. Ballistics and forensics matched the knife cuts to a blade belonging to one of Sidwell's enforcers, Cullum, whose name kept coming up. Police raided Sidwell's residences and made arrests. But Alexis realized it wasn't over. Sidwell was astute, always one step ahead. In the aftermath, Alexis stood at Marco's cemetery with a small group of coworkers and family. She placed one white lily on the casket. You didn't die for nothing, she said. The truth is out, but the horror endured. Finding Marco had awakened old wounds, the dread that danger awaited her, that her quest of justice would jeopardize those around her. She thought of her girls, Scout, and the fragile peace she was attempting to maintain. Poor Charles continued on as it usually did. Scandals disappeared and new ones emerged. However, Alexis saw that night in her office as a watershed moment. She would keep fighting for Marco, Sam, and the family she refused to abandon. The victim's name had been disclosed not just to her, but to the entire world. Marco, a man seeking the truth in a town full of mysteries. And in discovering him, Alexis discovered a new resolve. No more hiding from the shadows. she would meet it head-on, like she had always done. The rain had been falling all night, a constant, merciless curtain that transformed the streets of Port Charles into slick mirrors reflecting broken light. Alexis Davis has always sought comfort in storms. Something about the tumble outside helped her calm the insanity inside. However, the storm felt different tonight, heavier, almost ominous, as if the air itself was holding its breath. She had not intended on leaving the house. In truth, she had promised herself a quiet evening, a rare respite from her legal fights, family difficulties, and haunting memories of the past. But a late call altered everything. A scared, demanding customer implored her to meet in person. Alexis, ever the lawyer, had reluctantly consented. Now, when she tightened her coat and stepped out of her automobile near the ancient pier, she questioned her choice. The dock was almost desolate. The weak street lights flickered, creating long, wavering shadows on the damp pavement. The sound of water smacking on the wooden posts echoed in the distance, blending with a low rumble of thunder. "Hello," Alexis cried out, her voice cutting through the night. No response. She checked her phone. There are no new messages, no missed calls. Her face flickered with annoyance. "This better not be a joke," she said, cautiously stepping onto the slippery wooden boards. Each step creaked under her feet. The more she stepped onto the pier, the more the world behind her seemed to fade. The city lights faded, drowned by the rain and darkness. Then she saw it. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than a shadow, something discarded and forgotten. However, when she got closer, her breath stuck in her throat. A body. It lay twisted on the edge of the pier, one arm dangling limply over the side, fingers brushing against the black ocean below. The rain soaked through the victim's clothing, flattening the fabric on the unmoving skin. Alexis stepped back, whispering, "No." Her heart began to pound loudly and frantically, like if attempting to break free from her chest. She looked around, half expecting someone to pop out and announce it was all a big trick. But the pier stayed silent. Swallowing her trepidation, Alexis pushed herself forward. Years of dealing with legal and personal troubles had taught her one thing: running never solves problems. She knelt alongside the body, taking care not to disturb anything. Her hands trembled as she reached out, hovering briefly above the victim's shoulder before making contact. Cold. Too cold. There was no doubt. Whoever it was, they were gone. Alexis swiftly jerked her hand back, her thoughts racing. She needed to contact the cops. She needed to. A bolt of lightning shattered the sky. For a brief, dazzling moment, the world was illuminated. At that point, Alexis noticed the face. Her breath seized quickly, and the air escaped her lungs in a quiet gasp. "That's not possible." She lurched backward, nearly losing her footing on the damp planks. Her gaze stayed fixed on the lifeless face before her, painfully attempting to reconcile what she was witnessing. Because she knew the person, not only in passing, not just a distant acquaintance. This was someone connected to her life. Someone whose existence had implications, secrets, and a past that refused to be forgotten. Her thoughts rushed through memories, each one colliding with the next. Conversations, arguments. She'd offered warnings and ignored them. "What were you doing here?" she muttered, her voice shaking. The rain continued to pour, washing over the body as if to obliterate it and purify the scene of whatever had occurred. However, certain things could not be washed away. Footsteps reverberated softly behind her. Alexis froze. She slowly turned her head, her pulse racing. "Hello," she called out louder this time. The footsteps paused. Silence. "Who is there?" she demanded, forcing strength into her voice despite the fear curling up in her chest. No response. Her instincts urged her to flee, to rush back to her car and go as far away as possible. But another voice, quieter, but more powerful, told her she couldn't abandon this.
Not now.
Not with what she knew. She stood shakily, retrieving her phone from her pocket. She hesitated as she dialed. What will she say? That she had come here to meet someone who never arrived? That she had conveniently discovered a dead body? More significantly, What would happen if the identity of that body was confirmed? The ramifications struck her all at once. This wasn't simply a tragedy. It was a controversy ready to erupt. Her relationship with the victim would be questioned. Her appearance here would be scrutinized. Every decision she'd taken up to this point would be examined under a microscope. "Think, Alexis," she said to herself. Another flash of lightning illuminated the sky, followed by a tremendous crash of thunder. The storm was growing, as if mimicking the agony within her. She finally pressed the call button. "Call 911. What is your emergency?" Alexis swallowed hard. "My name is Alexis Davis. I'm at Pier 52. I have found someone. They are not breathing. Ma'am, could you please confirm if the subject has a pulse?" "No," she responded, her voice faltering. "They're gone. Stay where you are. Officers and paramedics are on their way. Stay where you are." The words echoed in her mind as she hung up the phone. She couldn't take her eyes off the body. The rain had started to wash away some of the blood, showing more of the victim's face. There were no mistakes. The identity was evident. With that clarity came a terrible understanding. This did not happen at random. This was not an accident. Someone has done this for a cause. And that reason was linked to a web of secrets which Alexis was all too familiar with. Minutes felt like hours while she waited. Each sound made her leap. Every shadow appeared to move just out of sight. Her ideas became increasingly disorganized. Who else knew this person was present tonight? Who would want them dead? Most significantly, who knew Alexis would join us? The distant sound of sirens eventually broke through the storm, becoming louder with each passing second. Relief overcame her, but it was swiftly replaced by dread. Because when the authorities arrived, everything changed. The truth would come out, or at least one version of it would. Flashing lights illuminated the pier as police cars approached, followed by an ambulance. Officers ran toward her, their expressions changing as they noticed the body. "Ma'am, step back," one of them said gently. Alexis complied, throwing her arms over herself as if to keep her together. "Were you the one who called it in?" another cop inquired. "Yes," she answered, her voice scarcely steady. "Have you touched anything?" "I checked for a pulse." The officer nodded and took note. "Do you know the victim?" he asked. The question lingered in the air, heavy and inevitable. Alexis hesitated. This was the moment. The boundary between witness and suspect was narrower than she wanted to admit. However, there was no point in lying. "Not about this." "Yes," she finally said. "I do." The officer's stare hardened. "Could you recognize them?" Alexis took a deep breath, her gaze returning to the lifeless figure on the pier. She talked with a steady voice, but the weight behind it was evident. The cop grimaced. "It's someone who shouldn't have been here tonight." "What do you mean?" Alexis caught his gaze, her eyes full of terror and determination. "I mean," she added slowly, "whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." Behind them, paramedics carefully shifted the body in preparation for transfer. The environment was alive with bustle, but Alexis felt curiously disconnected, as if she were seeing everything from a distance. Because one notion kept running through her head: this was not over. In truth, it was only the beginning. As the victim was hoisted onto the stretcher, a final bolt of lightning highlighted their face once again. With it, the truth became undeniable. The victim's identity would cause shockwaves across Port Charles. Secrets would surface. Alliances would alter. Alexis Davis, whether she liked it or not, was now at the center of everything. The storm raged on, but it was nothing compared to the fury that was about to devastate everyone connected to that dead body. Because in Port Charles, the dead were never silent for long. The stretcher vanished into the ambulance, its doors slamming shut with a finality that resonated through Alex's chest. She stood motionless, rain falling from her hair and clothing, not experiencing the chill in her bones. "Ms. Davis," the officer continued again, more firmly this time, "we're going to need you to come down to the station and give a full statement." Alexis nodded instinctively, though her mind was miles away. Of course, as she turned to follow him, she noticed a movement at the far end of the pier. Someone was watching. A man stood just beyond the range of the flashing police lights, partially shrouded by the darkness and rain. Tall, still, and unwaveringly focused on her. Alexis's breath tightened. "Wait," she said quietly, stopping in her tracks. The cop looked back. "Is there something wrong?" She paused, her instincts shouting at her. "I thought I saw," but when she glanced again, the figure had vanished. Only shadows remained. "No, it's nothing," she answered, despite her anxiety. As she moved toward the patrol car, her ideas became more clear and terrible. It wasn't just about the victim anymore. Someone had been present. Someone had stayed long enough to witness her find the body and respond. This meant one thing. She hadn't simply stumbled across a crime scene. She had been a part of it, whether she knew it or not. Alexis slid into the rear seat and wrapped her arms around herself, her jaw clenching with determination. If anyone thought they could manipulate her, frame her, or use her quiet to conceal the truth, they had made the wrong choice. Because Alexis Davis did not flee from danger. She faced it head-on, and whatever was out there hiding in the darkness was about to discover how dangerous she might